onion, garlic, tomato. These aren't just the ingredients for my killer spaghetti sauce. They're also custom firmwares. By the way, the secret is to put some anchovy paste in with the garlic. Trust me, just do it right before you add the crushed tomatoes. But after your big spaghetti supper, when you're sitting around drinking coffee and complaining about people who aren't there, what do you want, huh? What do you want then? That's right, cannolis. So today we're going to review an alpha build of Knulli for the TrimUI Smart Pro. Based on batocera 40, it provides a much needed emulation station style front end for this sneaky budget gem. We're going to go through the whole process from installing it on a fresh SD card, to loading your files, to setting it up, and then we're going to play some games. So take a plate from your old Nona and enjoy your cannoli. I know that's not how it's pronounced, Gary. I just wanted it to be a coherent introduction for once, you asshole. Your first step normally would be to download this from the GitHub page. Now the GitHub page doesn't exist yet. It's early alpha. So for now, just pretend like you did. Once you get your image file, use whatever writer you want. I like WinDisk Imager 32. You can use Blane Etcher. You can use all sorts of stuff. You select your image file. You make real sure you're burning it to the correct SD card. Don't overwrite your hard drive with this image. You'll be mad. Once you click OK, just walk away from the computer. It's going to take a hot minute. Don't worry about it. It's just going to take a hot minute. Once it's done, safely eject your SD card and put it into your handheld. On your first power up, you're going to see a cool Knulli logo. It's going to take a minute. Once it loads, you're not done because it has formatted the card in such a way that your Windows machine can't read it, which is an issue. However, you can go to Settings, Advanced, Front-End Developer Options. You're going to want to change the file format from X4 to XFAT. I'm XFAT. I need to lose more weight. It's going to ask you to reboot, so reboot, and then wait a while. Give it like 5 minutes. If it doesn't get off that boot screen, go ahead and press the power button until it turns off. Chances are if you put it in your computer, it will have formatted correctly. It just, sometimes it lags. Early alpha, don't get excited. Worst case scenario, put it in your computer, go to Disk Manager, and just reformat it yourself. Make sure that share partition is exFAT, and you're good to go. If you do go that route, however, you will want to put it back in your handheld so it can add the folder structure you need. Once that folder structure is in place, all you gotta do is copy over your BIOS and ROMs. I can't tell you where to get them, but if you know how to use the internet, you should be fine. Copy your BIOS into the BIOS folder, naturally, and then copy your ROMs into the corresponding ROMs folder. If you have your ROM saved for a different firmware and the naming convention is different, copy over your existing folders and then just rename them from like SFC to SNES. If you're using Windows, it'll just combine the folders. Easy peasy. Once that's all done, safely eject your SD card, plug it back into the handheld, turn it on. You're ready to go. And here, we're ready to go. Power this sucker on. So, Knulli. I'll call it Knulli once, just because I feel like they deserve that. But Knulli is still in super early alpha. This is a tester build given out to devs and super early supporters, and Zoo, apparently. So super alpha, and not everything works perfectly. I'll probably say that disclaimer 3 or 4 more times. This is a super alpha build. However, it is still very impressive that we have batocera 40, 64-bit version of RetroArch and all that jazz, running on the TrimUI Smart Pro. Now, I like Tomato OS, but Tomato OS was more like adding things on to the existing software, and I really didn't like the existing software. I like Emulation Station. A lot of people like Emulation Station. That's why a lot of these custom firmwares use it, because it's user-friendly, it's accessible, everyone can figure it out, from a grizzled veteran to a brand new user. Just like every other version of batocera, it will detect your games on the SD card and make appropriate folders for you. So all your games will have these beautiful little segments, and when you go in there, you will see all your stuff. And you can scrape your entire game library through the scraper tool. See, there it goes. We're scraping all our Game Boy Color games in here. You can also go in and say, if you really wanted Batman Chaos in Gotham, you could hold down A and scrape this one directly. Yep, that's the one. I mean, this is a basic Emulation Station batocera feature, but it's on the TrimUI Smart Pro now. So while those download in the background, we'll go over all the cool things you can do. Now this maxes out at PSP and some Dreamcast. I put a single PSP game on here because PSP, PPS is PP, isn't quite ready for prime time. You can run the lib retro version. You can also change the emulator you're using by holding down A again. and advanced game options, I have this set to libretro PPSSPP. If you try PPSSPP, it kind of runs. So it's an alpha, but right now the most stable way to do PSP is the libretro core and RetroArch. Now if you want to turn the bezel off, you can do that for this particular game through the RetroArch menu. You can also do that back in the PSP menu. So let's go back there real quick. So we didn't like that bezel. How are we going to fix it? Select Advanced System Options, and you can go into Decorations and we're going to turn them off. None. We don't want any. We're not going to have stretch bezels. We're not going to have any decorations. Back. So now, load it up. It should load to the correct aspect ratio. There we go. Now you're getting the whole screen. Easy peasy. I feel like bezels are enabled across the board. Again, it's an alpha, but I feel like bezels are enabled across the board because your lower end stuff, you're going to need it for Super Nintendo, NES, anything 4x3. Game Boy Advance, some slight bezeling, but PSP on here, you don't need to bezel at all, and you can turn it off. Oh man. Get dunked on, Trunks. Now this isn't the most stressful game we could possibly run on here, but it is running through RetroArch. It's not a standalone emulator, so the fact that it's running through RetroArch at 60 FPS, pretty impressive. A lot of that has to do with this batocera build with a high performance mode you can toggle off and on. It's also a 64-bit version of RetroArch, so you're getting a lot of enhancements in here. I wonder if we can bump up the shader to 2x. You can use the stick on here, although there are some drift issues, and it's software. It's not hardware, it's software, and they're working on it. I think they're going to release a new version next week with some calibration stuff for the joysticks, but right now the sticks are kind of hit or miss, and we'll see that in N64. We're running right now with a 2x scaler on, and you can see that we're still at 60 FPS, which bodes very well for eventual PPSSPP play. Now you're going to burn through the battery pretty quick on high performance mode, but it is cool you can toggle that. You can kind of overclock the system for specific high intensity cores or emulators. Deborah, you chump. Let's just jump into Cruis'n USA. We'll see if the N64 performance on Cruis'n USA is any good. Now with N64, specifically in the Lupin 64 Plus Next core, there are some weird artifacts around the edge of the bezel. It's still an alpha. Alright, well that's not very playable. Let's close out of there and try a different core. Gotta make sure we're on high performance, and heck, let's try, let's do parallel N64 on high performance mode, see how that works. Again, alpha build. This looks like it's running with frame skip on, but it's still having problems. And that's okay, because this is a very difficult game to run, and super early alpha build. We can only go up from here, but other not as demanding N64 games run very, very well. So like Mario Kart 64 runs fine. Alpha build, everyone, alpha build. There's lots of room for improvement. Oh, there goes the stick. I've noticed in Mario Kart specifically, right now, this early build, the analog stick, a little hinky. It's going to be fixed in the next build. So we're not going to focus on it too much or yell at them. They're doing a good job. Whee! So right now, in this super early alpha build, N64 is kind of a mixed bag, but that's okay. Game Boy Advance, on the other hand, runs flawlessly on here. You can expand the screen out almost to fill the entire thing. You can put a little LCD grid line filter on there. Beautiful. Didn't expect that, did you, Punch Ant? Now you're dead. This really is an amazing Game Boy Advance machine, especially at the low $50-ish prices we've seen recently. And what's really cool about this batocera build in general, not just for the TrimUI Smart Pro, but for the H700XX stuff coming out and all the other systems they're thinking about supporting, Knulli is going to have a very unified, light batocera experience for some of these handhelds. Up until now, we really haven't had a lot of batocera support. We've had custom-built firmware for each one of these systems. You know, you'd have your onion or your garlic. Back when I started this hobby, we had custom firmwares that weren't necessarily brand specific. They were kind of agnostic in the sense that you had ArcOS and Jealous and all these different systems. Then you got to a point where you had garlic, which was kind of specific for the XX and the XX Plus line, the H700. You had onion, which was specific for MIUI, and I think this Knulli, this kind of across-the-board batocera build, it's kind of a return to form, and I like that. Whee! Oh well. That's what I get for trying to talk while playing this game. Now for PlayStation and 4x3 games in general, I kind of like to leave these bezels on. You can stretch it out if you want, if you're a crazy person like Stubbs, and you want to stretch your game out as wide as you possibly can. But I kind of like these bezels, and I think it looks pretty sharp. And between the latent power of the TrimUI Smart Pro and the efficiencies you get out of the batocera build, you can put all sorts of cool shaders on there if you want. What's wrong, looking at? Are you okay? Do you have a bad dream? My name's Zoo. Oh. It is a friendly name, thank you. I really appreciate that. I like where this is going. The future is not set. There is no fate but we make for ourselves. I like having the Super Famicom bezel on here when I'm playing Japanese translations. Makes me feel like I'm in some cool alternate reality where I can read Japanese. But alas. Five points. That's an extremely deep Fire Emblem reference. If you understand what that is, please mention it in the comments. And something cool about DS games on here, because it's using Drastic, you can just do single screen and swap them with one of these buttons. And man, DS games look amazing on here. Now obviously this isn't a touch screen, so you're not going to be able to play touch-heavy games, but these ones that work really well on a single screen, oh buddy, you're going to have yourself a time. Now this isn't perfect by any means. The Drastic emulator on here still has some tweaks. If you make a configuration change to hotkeys, it doesn't seem to save. And save states aren't working perfect right now. But super early alpha. Gotta temper your expectations. Whoa. We do need to get to... What did we learn? We learned that cannoli is not how you say it. I just wanted to be clever and talk about all the different Italian foods that we've named our custom firmwares after, and might as well stay in line, right? Cannoli, potato, potato. Knulli is a very promising up-and-coming batocera 40 fork for the TrimUI Smart Pro, which obviously we're focusing on today. Now, the TrimUI Smart Pro up until now has only had Tomato OS, which is kind of an expansion on the existing firmware. And if you liked stock firmware on here, then Tomato OS is probably right up your alley. It does, right now, give you significantly better performance because it's not an alpha. If you didn't like stock OS, like me, then batocera running this emulation station framework, that might be a little bit more familiar for you. You might be more comfortable with that. I am. Another cool thing about Knulli is it's going to be available for the H700, which is the XX Plus HR 28 SP, whatever else they come out with this year. That entire line. Knulli should be compatible with all of them day one. Now, they had to build a specific 28XX build because of the smaller screen that's rotated, but if the SP model coming soon doesn't have a rotated screen or anything weird, it should be able to use just the generic XX Plus build. We'll see. My point is, and yes, I do have a point, is that Knulli will be available for a wide variety of chipsets and a wide variety of products. So if it works really good on here and it's available on a different handheld you have, maybe you can have kind of a unified experience. I really like it. This is a super early alpha build. I will try to make updates to the pinned comment or the description as things change. Once this gets out of alpha into a solid beta or release candidate, I'll do another dedicated video showing all the different features. But right now, as this is getting ready for further revision and maybe a public alpha release, I wanted to show you how to install it, how to get stuff running, and really have a good time with Knulli.
Leave the gun. Take the cannoli.
If you liked the video, then like and subscribe. And if you made it all the way to the end of the video, let's leave weird comments so no one else knows what's going on. In the comments, tell me what your favorite kind of pie is. We will confuse the hell out of the people that didn't watch all the way to the end. Anyway, take care of yourself. That's what you're best at. And while you're taking care of yourself, How about you take care of them handhelds too? That's what Stubbs always says. He also tells me, Zoo, you can't just use the company credit card to buy whatever you want. And I say, well, guess what? You shouldn't give me the password, jerk.